All right, guys, welcome to another episode of the Florida Hockey Bros podcast. My name is David. I'm joined by my brother Daryl on the other side of the screen. We have a little bit of a under the weather episode today for you guys. We both dealing with a bit of a bug, but we'll power through it, give you guys some content. And today we have one of our favorite topics: the Toronto Maple Leafs. We're gonna be diving a bit into the roster, the moves that they made this year and last year, how we look at Treliving and sort of the mess that he's kind of dealing with. And then we'll compare their rosters a little bit to the Panthers and kind of see how two different GMs approach a cup run window or a championship window and what the differences are there and why we feel like the Panthers have been really successful. Um, so let's start there. I think the best thing to do is to start with last season and sort of the moves that Treliving made to see to try to change the dynamic of the team and maybe have the stars kind of have some backup and some depth with Bertuzzi and Domi, etc. The bizarre Ryan Reeves um, sign that just made no sense. But let's start there. Let's start with last season with the Maple Leafs, Daryl. And I know since last year when we started recording, you always mentioned that there was a misconception of or a misunderstanding from the fans on what the Leafs were actually getting with Bertuzzi and Domi and what the point of all that actually was.
Yeah, I think that was, kind of doomed to fail from the start. I told you, like, they're going after last names that the fans can get excited about. It's a first time GM making a little splash. The Reeves things, the Klimber thing, in hindsight, doesn't quite work, man.
Klingberg, yeah.
Klimberg obviously was, we have to get a power play guy. This is whole like anti-Morgan Riley power play issue when it's like it's your entire team that's an issue with the power play. You could also play five forwards on the power play, but um, what we've seen is that Bertuzzi came in and he wasn't used right. He didn't fit in the lines. He struggled for a while. He's a net front guy. You know, I know Cito wanted him, but Cito knew that he was probably going to play on the second line with Kachuk and Bennett and be a nightmare, or maybe even playing with Barkov from X space. He could have fit on the third line. You just have to know how you're going to use him, right, on your team. And that's the way that Cito built the team last year with versatile guys like Rodriguez and specialized guys like Stenlin. And then brought Mikola for size and brought OEL, who had a resurgence for that depth. But I think with the Leaves, Bertuzzi came in and he got berated. He struggled, and then it took a while for him to actually figure out his mojo, because I just didn't know that Keith and they had to really discuss the best way to use this guy and understanding his skill set. He doesn't have the speed that other guys do, but he's a good passer. He's a front net guy. You need to have him on lines where he's going to make the most out of that. But if you have him with Matthews is just going to be shooting the puck all the time. Bertuzzi's not going to have a chance to touch it. So those two guys shouldn't be together. And so, Domi on the third line as center, like he wasn't really playing center. I think in Dallas, he wasn't really playing center with Carolina. All of a sudden, you expect him to be a third line center when he can't play defense, can't shut people down. He looks his best player with Matthews on the wing as a passer. But if he's on your first line, you're not winning a cup. I'm sorry, it's just not at that level. So what was the logic there? And now you're having the same issue now with the third line and Domi, who's your center. So to me, from a roster construction perspective, were those the best guys to get? Was Domi the right guy to keep for that role? Like, I get it if you want him at the third line winger, but if you already have Marner, you already have some of that skill set. Wouldn't you have been better with a two-way center to play, third line instead
Yeah.
of getting the name or whatever? So I get it. It's exciting. It's fun for the fans or whatever. But like from a team construction perspective, I don't think that people realize that Domi in the playoffs, it's a minus player. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think that the thought was to bring in those three guys, um, Reeves, Domi, and Bertuzzi to bring some grit. And it just never worked. Domi and Bertuzzi are not big hitters. They're not like super physical guys. They grind out a little, they grind it out a little bit, but they're more like pests, and we didn't even see a lot of that last season. It was also kind of weird. It was almost like they got beat by the Panthers and they said, hey, let's try to replicate this like in a really like with like a really low budget. It's like a B horror movie trying to compete with like the blockbuster hit of the season or the year. and it just never makes sense to us.
Yeah, if you think Bertuzzi is going to be Kachuk and Domi are going to be Bennett, you're an idiot.
Exactly, exactly, and to your point about the line combinations that Keith had last year, it just never worked, and it was almost like designed to fail. Your point about Austin Matthews and Bertuzzi is an excellent one because Austin Matthews plays like a winger, like a scoring winger. He's not really a center. He's not looking to pass. He's not McDavid trying to feed Hyman
He needs to
down
be
low.
fed in order to score too.
Right. Because he can, he can create his own shot, but he's
But
not
he's
like this
not he's
super
not
skill
McDavid, he's not
skater.
McKinnon, bro.
Yeah, he's not this super skill puck handler. So you don't really have that. You have a very unique structure to your team. You have a very unique, set of guys that can bring you A and B, and you're missing that C. Um, and I just don't think you're gonna get it. And now, shifting into this year, some of the moves that he's made, and you're gonna get into it now with Pacioretty and Hakanpää and these guys, but it just never. It seems like it just doesn't really make sense until the stars shift their mindset and start to play a different way, starting with also Matthews, Marner, and Nylander. And Marner and Nylander are just they're not big hitters. They're not physical guys. They're gonna try out Nylander as a center, I think, on the second line in preseason and try to go with that, which makes sense because you have no centers. You have no center depth. Your third line center is gonna be Tavares, who's older and very slow. So we can start there with some of the moves that they made this season. Bringing in some of OEL, Tanev, Stolars, and just not only bringing in those guys, but what they're paying them.
Yeah, I think for me the issue is that all of this gets overblown in terms of the fit of certain players. Um, Tanev, it's like being sold as like an elite defender, and I think he's a terrific defensive defenseman in the league for sure. But at his age, and and just to be real, he didn't win with Vancouver, he didn't win with the Flames, and he didn't even win with Dallas, and I think he got injured at the end with Dallas in the playoffs. So that's just a reality you just have to contend with, and you give him a bunch of years. So was he the best defenseman you could get? Maybe there weren't other people willing to come for that money, but um, I don't know that that was the best solution. You paid OEL. I think you overpaid him in years and money for what he can give you. He's solid, but he's definitely a third pair guy if you want to contend. And he's just getting older anyway. So to me, that's an issue. His minutes got reduced in the playoffs for a reason. Um, and so, yeah, it's okay. They're solid additions, but they're being sold and as these huge things that, oh, defensive core is better than ever. And yeah, that's only true because you criticize guys like Gustafson and Hall, who aren't the best guys, but they're serviceable guys that the Panthers could probably use one of those guys as a depth guy, and they would find a role for them. And you also, I've seen fans say, well, Hakanpää, who just got added, and Benoit and McCabe combined for a ton of hits and block shots or whatever. And I'm like, you had that with Luke Shen and Giordano and McCabe 2 years ago. You had it with Edmondson and Lebushkin and Benoit and McCabe last year. Just a different name. Hakanpää, all he does is kill penalties and hit people, which is great. But his WAR is 20%. He's not a great puck mover, doesn't add much else. He's been a bottom pair guy in Dallas. Couldn't even play in the playoffs because of his knee last year. So that's always going to be a concern. And I know it's only a 1 year deal, but if all of a sudden he's not working for you, if you have to LTIR that, you can accrue cap then. You're also paying him twice as much as we're paying Nick Schmidt, who has a 77% WAR, and it allows you just a lot more flexibility. So I think they have cap issues with how much they have to overpay. Stolos is getting paid more than twice the Panthers paid him. OEL is almost making twice as much as we paid him. So when you start to add that up, Hakanpää 1.7, it's an overpay for how injured that guy is or could be. Um, so that's how it makes it hard for you to actually build out that roster. And I know it's limited in Toronto and Canada and how many players want to go there and all that. So that's a reality. Plus, you overpaid a bunch of your stars. So it's their own doing. But to me, I just think that the fans, you switch up the names on them, and all of a sudden there's this idea that like there's a ton of depth on the defense, which you don't have. You don't have because Liljegren is still going to be a liability in the playoffs if you keep him. it could be that Tanev or Hakanpää is injured at a critical moment or out for a while at any point in the season. Then who are you going to play from your depth? You don't have enough cap for everybody right now. And the same goes for like having Matthew Nice. What if Nice has a bad year or Nice is still very young, struggles on that first line? Who the hell is your left wing that you can move in there? Is it going to be Pacioretty, who's 36 and slow? Or it's going to be 36 and slow? Is it going to be McMahon, a journeyman that you don't know how healthy he can stay? Also, you guys have a roster that's incredibly prone to injury. And again, it's not just that. It's like you don't have enough to plug and play. When you look at the Panthers, man, just look at the lines, how they're built. Barkov and Reinhardt, two-way players. You can put anybody on the left wing. They can score, they can play, but they really can defend. Sam Reinhardt can play center too, and has played center, has taken faceoffs over Barkov, depending on what side of the ice they're on. So you could have Verhage there, you could have Rodriguez there. You put anybody you want. Keep Maki Samoskevich, a rookie, like anybody you want, and you still feel like it's a solid line. And the same with the second line, Kachuk and Bennett. They've played with Lustrainen, they've played with Rodriguez, they played with Verhage. And it works because the identity of those two guys is set for that kind of line. They're maybe less better on defense, but they're forechecking machines. So anybody who could create a bit of space or go to the net can help them. And the same with Lundell and Lustraning on the third line. They're like a baby Barkov and Reinhardt. They play two ways, a little bit of offensive upside. But anybody they've played with Reinhardt on the third line. They play with Rodriguez. They play with Nick Cousins. And they play with Tarasenko in the playoffs and look good with all of those guys. And now they're probably going to get Maki Samoskevich. So that's the other thing. With the depth, you have to play Nice, who's still very young, same age, same kind of trajectory as Maki. And you've had to rush him a bit. And now you're putting him in a really tough position. You did last year. And then you're going to put him in the first line now, probably, while Maki goes to the third line with the Panthers and can marinate there for a whole year after having been a top liner in the AHL and led the team in scoring and points. So to me, it's just how you build the team and how strategic you are with your guys and how, from your young developmental players to your plug and play guys, to your depth guys, to your journeymen, to your stars. So yeah, it's good. It's good that you got Hagenpah and Tanev and OEL, but in my mind, you have a brittle, it's a very old defense, and you guys are gonna hit, but you don't have a ton of puck movers because Tanev is not that, Hakanpää isn't that. And OEL, if you're gonna rely just on him to do that, he's a defensive liability. Um, so yeah, and you don't have a third line center. Tavares, you keep criticizing him as a center because he plays with Nylander, who plays no defense, so he has no backup. And you have Domi out there, you have Holmberg, and you have McMahon as left wingers. So anyway, man, it's just how come they didn't see this coming? I guess it's my question. Even with all the limitations, I could have told you way smarter ways to do that. You could have used Evan Rodriguez. I would have paid him the Domi money instead of playing Domi on your team. But you want the last name, man. You want the flashiness, the
Yeah.
homegrown guy. For that same money, because he's making 3 with the Panthers, he might have taken a 3.75 with the Leafs. That guy, I'm telling you, you could play him on any line and he would have been hugely valuable to you.
Yeah, and it's the experience factor as well for Rodriguez playing with Colorado and Pittsburgh and getting deep in the playoffs with those teams and playing top line minutes in both teams, I think. But I think in theory, Treliving and maybe even Shanahan sort of had this idea of like, look, we we know what we have, and Keefe knew exactly what he had. It was the rumors that was out there that Keefe was very hard on them behind closed doors and asked them to defend better and play better, but they just didn't care. They didn't listen. But I think in theory they wanted to bring in this greedy guys last year. Now they're bringing in experienced players, veterans on defense. The problem with that, even if it makes sense on paper, is that you don't have an 80% complete team and you're bringing in OEL, Tanev, Hakanpää to complete that championship team. Your core, including Riley, Lilligren, the Domi who you just resigned, Austin, Marner, Nylander, you have McMahon still. That core is not like good enough. If you look at a core of like the top 6 players of every team, they're probably like number 8 or 9 in the league. If you include the West alone, there's like 4 teams there that their core 6 players are better. If you go to the Atlantic, you have even the Bruins who have some no names. That top six is probably grittier and more playoff ready in that system and culture than you are, and they don't even have the smartest of coaches in Montgomery. So there's just a lot that goes into it, and you're banking on a lot of things that could easily fail, including Wall and his injury, his past injury history. Stolars, who's not really a number one. There's a reason for that. Yes, his stats as a backup are amazing, but there's a reason why he's a backup at the age of 30, 31. And like you mentioned, you overpay for OEL. That's the only way he came. You waited on Tanev because you knew that, I'm sure there was a verbal agreement there that he was going to come after the season as a free agent. That way you didn't have to waste the pick. All those things that you have no idea how they're going to work. So if you're looking at it from the perspective of a cup run where you just extended Matthews for 4 more years after this one, I believe. So essentially 5 more years, you have to build towards that. So I would have preferred, if I'm Trey Living, I go to Shanahan and I say, look, this coming season and the next, we just might not get there. And it doesn't make sense to overpay Tanev and give him a freaking term until he's like 41. We don't have to overpay for OEL, who's turning 35, I think, or 34. We don't have to do all these things now. Let's bring in some of the young guys. Let's plug them in, give them some ice time, or let's bring in guys on 1 year deals like Zito did 2 years ago and last year. And let's see how far we can get with that while Berube works on Nylander, Marner, and Matthews. Because that would be like, if you're all in on those three guys. You clearly are. Marner's going to get extended. So that's what I would do. I would say let's focus on the coaching and the culture of the team for this season and the next. And then those last 3 years of Matthews' contract, which Nylander's still going to be here, Marner's still going to be here, then we can talk about a cup run in those years, because now you sort of have to take 2 steps back. So you can take 3 steps forwards, essentially, in my opinion. So if you go, if you go line by line right now, it's scrambled. The fact that you're trying Nylander at center in the second line, it's already a mess. I think they're going to struggle.
And the other thing is the way that they've set it up is that this is your team now for a while. Because you've given Tanev, what, 6 years? You've given Oyel 4.
Yeah.
And Tavares likely gets an extension of 3 to 4 years.
I think Domi got, what, 3?
Domi got I think it was 3 to 4 years. I think at 3.45. So you already got all those guys locked up, and you're going to pay them. And then Wall's contract kicks in next year, and Nice is going to need an RFA contract that's going to be in the 3 to 4 mil probably range. But I'm assuming, especially if he has a solid year this year, at least 3 million. And so, as my dog goes crazy, there's another dog going by. So maybe you can take this one there. But yeah, I think that the contracts are already locked up and the money, and so you're gonna run out of that money, that bump, pretty quickly.
Yeah, and that's the point. The point is that you're basically saying the next 3 to 4 years, this is our chance with these guys. So you're set. So now if it's a complete failure, what are you going to do? You're going to trade Tanev when he's 37 years old? To who?
Oh, and McCabe needs an extension and an increase in salary. So yeah, you're going to have the same team with this money locked up. And again, as you know, Marner might get a little bump, and some of these younger guys get a bump, and your flexibility to add free agents as your team starts to get older. That means that you're going to have to hope for Cowan and Menton in maybe next year to be ready to contribute at 20 years old. And that's asking a lot of these guys. I mean, look, took Lundell 3 years to really, really blossom into a guy that could help you win a cup. And he had all the talent and two-way play in the world. So I think, again, it's like Lundell has been developed in that third line. There's no need to rush him. There's no need to overdo it with him. They're going to do the same with Mackey. You're going to see that with other Panthers prospects. And there's enough plug and play there to be smart about what you want. And there's just the difference. If Tanev really wanted to go to Toronto, Why did he ask for the 6 years or for all that money? Nate Schmidt wanted to go to the Panthers and win a cup and play with Maurice again. He took a huge discount. And I'm not saying that the discount needs to be the same, but you have guys asking for more, right? You're paying now Domi more than Rodriguez, who just helped us, who was integral in helping us win a cup, and you can trust him out there to play anytime. So to me, I just think that again, that's the difference. And you can create the narrative. You can think that Domi is this wonderful passer who's going to help you win. I just don't see it. I don't think you understand why you're watching. He's ultimately going to be a liability against top teams on defense, and there's no way he's going to play on the first line over Marner unless there's an injury. And and on the third line, he's going to have to defend against Barkov when you have home court advantage, home ice advantage for any team, including the Panthers. So to me, that's the way you have to think about this. How am I going to match up my lines against top competition? What am I building? What kind of a program and system am I building with my team that I know I can trust these guys to do that and compete and play the kind of style that you need? When you've seen year over year, that's not the case. You just gave me 11.5 to Nylander. What is the value? What is the I want to understand. Is it just the scoring and the flashiness in the regular season?
Yeah, they paid him to
Yes,
score basically.
he's gonna get the tickets, and he justifies his money from that perspective. From a playoffs perspective, we've talked about it ad nauseum. He's not as much of a killer as people think scoring wise, because look, he has fewer game-winning goals than most people on the Panthers at this point. But he doesn't forecheck, and he doesn't backcheck, and he cannot play center really. Um, so what does he do? Just float around until all of a sudden he might give you one key goal here, one key goal there for 11.5? I'd rather have it with Verhage for 4. And the minute Verhage comes and says, I want 7 or 8 million, bye bye. I can replace you. I can find another scorer. Mackey can become a 30-goal scorer. But I'm not going to overpay for the value of what you provide to the team, right? Reinhardt provides a lot of value because he does a ton of stuff outside of scoring goals. He doesn't need to score 50 for us to justify $8 million. But is that the value you're getting from Nylander? I would argue no, right? So, and you're doing that with Marner, and you're doing that with Matthews, and you're doing that with a bunch of these guys. So that's the whole point, bro. That's the whole point.
But it's a perspective, and it's the fans' perspective as well. I'll never forget. Um, what's this guy's name? JB, Justin Bourne from Kipper and Bourne, saying that he wouldn't pay Reinhardt because he's just not a skilled player, doesn't skate that well, etc. And it's just that perspective. It's that perspective from these guys and the media and Shanahan and the team running and the GM running the team that basically backfires on them. You can't, man, I would have, and I said it at the time, I would have traded Nylander like in a heartbeat. I would have traded him, gotten two guys that can, maybe a defenseman and a forward that can just plug in there. You don't need Nylander to give you a ton of points. You're already gonna get that with Matthews and Marner. You don't need three guys, scoring 80 points in the season. You have all this like regular season stuff. Oh, they're gonna be fine in the regular season. They're gonna score. They're gonna win. Yeah, but you can't even win your own division, except for that COVID year or whatever. I think it was. You can't win your own division. What does that say? And you're going against less talented teams on paper, like the Panthers, who have Reinhardt, who's not talented. You're going against the Bruins, who have like three no names in the top six. You know what I mean? Like it goes beyond just the flashy stuff and the scoring. I think as fans, we look at the scoring, and the media is guilty of this as well. We look at the scoring, and that's all we tend to just care about. Again, Austin Matthews is not a center. He's a winger. He's a scorer. He's not. He's good two ways. He defends well. He has takeaways. He's a big guy. He's not going to give you 100 points with 60 assists and prop up the other guys in the top six. He's just not going to do that. In the power play, he's just there to score. He's not there to feed the guys, and that does matter when it comes to
So
the
the
playoffs.
minute that you take away Matthews' ability to score, he's over. He's done.
Exactly that's what I was going to say. So in the playoffs, it's not that. It's that why do you think they keep losing? The other team knows what you're going to do. They know where Matthews is going to be on the
Put
ice.
Barkov on him. Put your best defensive forward on Matthews, and chances are you can win a series. The issue is, and that can happen against the Panthers, but you can shut down Reinhardt, you can shut out Kachuk, you can shut down Barkov, and they can beat you a different million different ways. I think Rodriguez and Lundell have more points in the finals than any of the top forwards for the Panthers. Like but those forwards were really in the games that they won were shutting it down. So to me, that's the issue with these guys. Yesterday in TSN, Hayes is saying, Nylander's an elite forward. It's an elite forward. And I'm like, well, elite forward from a skill perspective. But his career high is back-to-back 40-goal season, like literally 40. Verhage
For Hagee clears,
has
yeah.
scored more than that in a season. Marchessault has scored more than that in a season. Look at the history of the game. Like 40 goals in a season is really good. Reinhardt just scored 57, and Justin Bourne saying I wouldn't sign him, I wouldn't pay him. Which I have to say, this is why we have these shows, man. Justin Bourne was a video guy in the AHL. He's played the game professionally. He's a pundit. He's been there forever. His misunderstanding of the game is mind blowing to me. I do not understand how this guy thinks you can win with all offense and scoring 5 goals in the playoffs. Like, does he not understand what he's watching? Does he not understand what Reinhardt does two ways? Like, if you had to break down video on Reinhardt, you would see how elite this guy is. Like, not just because of the scoring. And so the value, the fact that it doesn't look flashy to you, that's your evaluation. Or it looks flashy. Or they go off for like 10 goals in a row. Like, I would put Reinhardt out there against any of your top guys in the playoffs, in the Leafs. Like, he will shut them down. And so to me, and that's what I want from him. Now, if he gives me an extra goal here and a power play goal there and in overtime, like he did, like he did against the Leafs, like he did against the Rangers, and then he won the cup with a goal, just give me that key goal, bro, and then shut it down. That's worth the 8 million, 9 million, whatever you want to pay him. So to me, it's how poorly people evaluate players and how much fans and pundits are like blinded by the flashiness of a player without stepping back and understanding, like, Ovechkin took forever to win and the dude was running over people. How many highlights do you have out there of Ovechkin having 5 hits in one shift and running people over? Sidney Crosby and Malkin fighting everybody. Like, to me, that's, how many times have the Bruins beaten you, even though they have less talent? Because they go to the net. Look at all the goals that they scored to beat you. Rebounds, tips. Bergeron's goal was a rebound in game 7 in overtime. Some of those tying goals last year that the Bruins had with like screens and guys in front of the net. Like, that's how they beat you. They don't need all the flashy shit, bro, in the playoffs. Nobody does. You don't need it. No one's going to give you that space. So to me, it's just mind blowing that we're still here with the way that this team is constructed. And I, from the outside, I'm saying maybe I'm crazy. Maybe they prove me wrong. And, that can happen. But I look at certain teams like the Devils, like the Leafs, and I'm like, I wait till you're in a series with a team that can play 3 to 4 lines and can forecheck. Like, you're gonna get ground, so badly that you're not gonna get out of the series in more than 6 games. So maybe they can hope. I guess that's what the seasons are for. But the team is constructed in a way that I see it losing again.
Yeah, I think just the fact that that's how they view it, how they view Austin Matthews and Nylander and Marner and their value, it's what's good. It's just they're set up to fail and to go. It's not. I want to bring up this point because that was the whole thing with McKinnon propping up Marner and all the stuff since they were training together. It's not that Marner is a target because it's easy to target him now since he doesn't, he has to extend and it's just easier to trade him or let him walk. It's that you view you view these guys through a certain lens that is just not practical or valuable in the playoffs. And you have nowhere to go now. Once you gave Nylander a full no trade clause, Austin Matthews in 4 years, you're gonna have to pay him another 15 mil a year or 16. Who knows what that cap is by then? So you kind of backed yourself into a corner, and now fans and everybody else, the media, whatever, they're coming down hard on Marner. But if you look at the numbers, as far as like defense, he's way better than Nylander. Um, he's a much better regular season guy than Nylander. He's excellent on the power play, very skilled. It's just that when the playoff series gets to that game 4, game 5, they can't handle it. They can't handle that. And there's also the mental aspect, I think, which happens to a lot of teams. If you watch soccer, it happened to Barcelona when Messi was there the last few years, kind of a mental thing in the Champions League. It's happening to the Dolphins, who just played the Bills. It's a mental thing. You can't beat this team. They're 11-2 now against you. So that's right there in your head. Even if you're new to the team, you're coming into that vibe and that culture and that understanding that you weren't good enough in the past. So getting over the hump, I think, is going to be the hardest thing. The best thing that could happen to the Leafs is just kind of getting to the finals um, with a miracle run. But I just don't see that happening with the Atlantic, man. Like those teams in the Atlantic keep improving every year. You're talking about 4 teams, including the Leafs, that constantly improve every year and try to compete and go for a cup. So it's just not that easy, man. And you need that. You need something that sets you apart. And I
And you're
just
gonna
don't
have
think
to
that.
get through the top Metro team by the end anyway, too. So it's not like getting there is easy for anybody, including the Panthers. The last thing I'll say is this: at the end of the day, my larger point is that your front office is not serious about winning the playoffs, right? And once that happens, you are really already setting yourself up to lose. Now you can look at it, you can spin it a million different ways. You can spin the Domi thing, the Nylander thing, the Tanev thing, and say that's the best they could do, and those guys can actually win. When you go from not wanting to give Nylander 10 million the summer before, which is kind of, maybe, let's say that you compare it to Reinhardt and you say, well, I'm going to give Nylander the 10 because of the tax difference versus the 8.6. He's a flasher guy, blah, 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 blah. He's older than Reinhardt and doesn't do as much as Reinhardt outside of scoring. But let's say that you can think he's a better, his point totals are higher, blah, blah, blah. He's just more skilled. You pay him the 10 million, you still have that 1.5 extra you could have used. But when you go from not wanting to do that, not trading him, and then waiting for him to have a hot start, because that's all he had was a hot start, because he did not have a great ending to the season. And then you pay him that 11.5 to that guy, overpaying, like grossly overpaying for him at that point, because he had a hot start. He ended up scoring 40 goals, bro. He didn't even reach the 100 points. So 100 points JT Miller did, like Kachov did back to back. And you guys like think of these guys as just like, grinders, not sexy, blah, blah, blah. They're guys that can probably lead you more to winning. And that's where your standard is. You overpay this guy. You're not serious about winning. You're serious about selling tickets, no trade clause. The Tanev contract. You're not serious about winning, bro. A 6-year contract to that guy. That's the best you can do. And Marner's gonna get re-signed. That is just, at the end of the day, accept it. And I know a lot of fans have. A lot of fans have told us in the comments, like, yeah, the Leafs are screwed until they move on from this generation. But that's the reality at the end of the day. So pundits can sell it any way they want, and people can kind of quickly get blinded by a certain name here or there. But I'm sorry, I hear that you signed Hakanpää, and I don't give a fuck. As a Panthers fan, makes me feel no different way about facing you at all. I'm sorry. I know he can hit. That's fine. We face a bunch of guys who can hit. We've been hit. Like, it's more than that. It's a full team. I'm thinking of your top 6. I'm thinking of your third line, how much you can eat them up. I'm thinking how your top 6 can be shut down. How like mistake prone you guys are. How Wolf might get injured in any moment, and then you have Stoller starting out there, and I'm telling you, he's not a starter, not a proven guy in the playoffs. So that's all I'm saying. Like, you have to understand that you can sell it to yourself any way you want. But what is the standard? To be a little bit better on paper, or to freaking try to contend, because this is year 8 of this core who are becoming, veterans now. And and I have to say, this is a different conversation. Matthews with the C. I can't wait to see that pressure and having to face the music all the time, and not having Tavares as a shield for the rest of the team saying the most boring shit. Now he's going to be the one accused of being boring. He's going to be the one accused of, shilling for the team, and not holding people accountable. He's going to be the one that Berube is going to look at. So, is he going to be able to dish the puck now, or is he going to keep saying to everybody, I'm the captain, like, feed me? So I again, bro, it's like it's a soap opera. It really is. It's like bad decision after poor decision after bad match after over,
Yeah, it's
and
like doubling, tripling,
we're the Mecca
quadrupling
of
down.
hockey, and we can't win, and we're the victim blaming and blah blah blah. And then, like you said, told me before that we started, and you have Dangle saying that Steven Lawrence is a PK specialist, even though he couldn't crack the Panthers PK last year. Do you, man?
Yeah. Yeah, they really double down on all the bullshit from the past. I mean, this is what, year 9 or year 8 for these guys. Coming into league pretty soon, they're gonna be 30, 31, 32, and we're still gonna be having the same conversation. I think it's just a joke. There is a joke of a team, is a joke of a GM. It is what it is. You gotta call it like it is. The success has not been there, being the top 3 team in the division year after year and never getting past the first round except for 1 year where you absolutely got outplayed. It's not worth the money that you're paying the guys. It's not the right team construction. It's pretty obvious. Um, and then last thing before we wrap it up, I want to talk about the goaltending tandem, especially in the Atlantic. There was kind of a question post on social media about which goaltending tandem was the best in the Atlantic. And a lot of fans, Leaf fans, of course, were saying that Wall and Stollers were number one and that it wasn't even a question. And I want to start here. Stollers, there's a reason why he's a really good backup. He's a good goaltender in general. He's a big guy, 6'6", decent movement, side to side, east to west. The problem with Stollers is, and when you're a backup goaltender, is most nights you're playing against a shitty team so that your starting goaltender can rest. And you're playing a lot of back to backs, either the first one or the second one, depending on the matchup. If the Florida Panthers were playing the Bruins and then the Montreal Canadiens, Bob will get the Bruins, Stollers gets the Montreal Canadiens. It's an easier matchup. It's an easier win. That's the point. The reason why you're a really good backup and cannot be a starter, Alex Lyon in Detroit, is because of that. It's because you don't really have what it takes to.
Corpusalo in Ottawa, I think he's a solid goalie, but he's not a full-on starter, man.
Exactly. So that's the thing that they're missing. Yeah, Wall might have Stollers might have a great season as a backup if Wall stays healthy. But if Wall does get injured and Stollers has to start and he has to go against the Bruins and then Montreal and then maybe the Panthers and then the Lightning, he's not gonna win all those games. He's not.
It's just a workload. He's never started more than 28 games in a season ever. He hasn't had to play a bunch of games in a row, really, in his career. He's already 30. He's a big dude. And now you're gonna have Matt Murray and him if Will is injured. So he's a good backup if your starter is reliable, if he's a proven guy, right? And you can ride him. And also you can need to have a defensive system. The Panthers have a very strong defensive system, so that also helps hide deficiencies for a lot of goalies. We've seen that. Um, but to say that Wall and Stories are like the best tandem in the Atlantic is laughable. It's Homer talk, bro. It's not proven. Obviously Swim and Corpusalo I think are better, and I think Bobrovsky and Knight are better, and I think Vasilevsky and Johansson, even though Johansson's not very good, but Vasi's so good that, and Johansson carries some of the low last year. And then Olmark and Forsberg is not the worst tandem. Montemo and Primo are actually kind of underrated because they haven't proven it, but Montreal's defense is just not very good. So you're not going to have good numbers. And then UPL and Devon Levi, they need to prove themselves. They're still kind of young, and so but they have upside. They have talent too. I think the Talbot Lion thing is terrible, but and I'm not saying that Wall and Stollers are like seventh best, even though but are they top 2 or 3 in the division? Definitely not. Like
No, not
they need
yet.
to show it.
Not yet. Wall is still, he's still kind of young for a goaltender, and he just hasn't proved it. He has to kind of give you that full season healthy for you to see that sample size. And again, he has to play against top competition night in and night out. Spencer Knight was decent in the playoffs a few years ago before he went to the player assistance program. Um, and he was kind of going to be the starter for the Panthers, but they decided to give him more games in the AHL, play a full season, etc. With these young guys, you have to bring them up slowly and wait for them to actually prove themselves a couple of years as a starter with a good with good numbers, and then you can give them that contract that you're gonna get. I think the one thing I'll say about the Leafs, they were smart with Wall. They didn't overpay. I'm sure the injury thing was a fact, and obviously he wants to stay there. Otherwise, he wouldn't have done that bridge deal. But I think they do have the value for the money when you look at what goaltending tandems are getting paid nowadays, with the Panthers, I think, being the highest. But it's just tricky, man. It's tricky to say that it's gonna work out when you just haven't seen it. And Stollers has had 2 seasons of 20 plus games only. With the Ducks, he had 28, and then last year with the Panthers, he had 27. Um, that's just not enough, man. That's not enough for you to say that he's amazing. And in 22-23, his goals against average was extremely high, 3.73. Yeah, it was the Ducks, but the year before he was at 2.67. So he can definitely have a bad season this next year after having a good season. It's kind of how it goes with these backups sometimes. And that's why you see teams kind of switch backups here and there. But but yeah, we'll see. I mean, maybe Tanev and OEL can help the goaltenders out um, with the veteran play and their defense. I just think by the time they get to the playoffs, that team is either going to be those defensemen are either going to be tired or it's just not going to work out with Wall. So it's going to be fascinating to see.
Yeah, man. We'll see. We'll see. I'm just trying to, trying to name things for what they are versus what they're necessarily being sold as. Um, yeah, we'll see. We'll see who's proven right
Yeah.
in the end. It's just, I see it coming. I just see it coming.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. The season is almost here, 23 days away, 24, something like that.
Yeah, we're almost there. Camp starts next week, bro.
Yeah, we have the rookies playing now.
Yeah, today the Panthers play a bunch of rookie teams playing all over the league.
Yeah, we'll sprinkle that in on the coming episodes next week. We'll be watching those games. At least my brother will.
Learning out.
To kind of get a feel for these Panther prospects and just kind of what's going on around the league. And then that's it. Once preseason starts, we'll keep an eye out on the Leafs. See what they do with Nylander at center. I just saw so the projection is for Domi to be the top right winger, and then Marner with Nylander. It's kind of weird, but
On the second line?
yeah, the projections is
So it's Domi,
nice,
Matthews,
nice
and
on the
Nice.
left, Matthews in the middle, and Domi on the right. So Domi, Matthews, nice, and then you're gonna have Pacioretty with Nylander and Marner.
Oh, wow.
That's your second line. That's gonna go against Bennett and
So
Kachuk.
Tavares to the third line.
Bennett, Kachuk, Rodriguez. That's what they're gonna face.
Oh my God. So Pacioretty's going to have to chase Rodriguez all over the ice.
Yeah, and Rodriguez was like what 31, 32, and he's fast. I think he's like our
Oh, he was
fastest
30,
player.
31. Yeah, he's still
He's a very fast skater.
he's gonna, yeah, he's only 2 more years with the Panthers. He's gonna be 32 by the time he's done with the Panthers. He's not that old, but um anyway, yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway, I hope that's an actual line. I want to see this stuff. Yeah, I really want to. I'm saying soap opera. It's just like it's fun, man. It's fun
yeah.
stuff.
All right, guys. If you got this far, we really appreciate you guys for watching. Leave us any comments whether you agree or disagree, what your expectations are for the Leafs and Panthers this year. And we'll catch you all next week. Peace.